Everyone, hi. I'll give you a few minutes to hop on. I'm sure you heard the sad news about my friend and everyone's favorite singer, Tony Bennett, who passed away. We're actually going to have a conversation not about Tony, although I'm going to be posting a very extensive interview we did. Hi, everybody, a while ago. But the reason why I'm joining you now is we're going to be talking about the writer's strike. Friend
Hi,
Cynthia
Katie. How are
Nixon. Hi,
you?
Cynthia. I'm fine, thank you. We really appreciate you hopping on this Instagram Live, Cynthia, because I know it's been 1 week and I wanted actually to cover this on the first day, but I think it's great to be able to get your perspective about what's going on and sort of how Hollywood is responding to a really, I wouldn't say unprecedented, but it hasn't happened, I guess, Cynthia, since 1960 when the actors and the writers went on strike. So I thought it would be super helpful to my followers to talk to you and to have you kind of explain some of the issues that were at stake for both writers and actors. But before we kind of get into the nitty gritty, Cynthia, what has the last week been like? What has the response been like now that SAG-AFTRA has joined the
You
Writers
know,
Guild?
so many of us actors were there, when the writers struck, we joined the pickets in support, and we knew, because of course we love writers, they're our friends, they're our creative partners. And we also knew that exactly the issues that they were striking about were issues that we were very much experiencing too. And so, nobody, let's be really clear, nobody wants to strike. The writers don't want to strike, the actors don't want to strike, but we feel that we have been pushed so far up against the wall, that if we don't stand our ground now and fight for these things that should have been given to us a long time ago, that are, that both of our professions, writing for television and film and acting on television and film, except for the very, very top, people, is being destroyed as a profession, because it's become exponentially harder for journeyman actors and journeyman writers to earn a living, to support their families, to pay their rent.
Let's talk about sort of some of the main issues because I think, Cynthia, my understanding is is a lot of overlap between what has happened to writers and in some ways what has happened to actors with the advent of streaming. And so can you explain some of the things that have happened as the result of streaming and how it's changed the equation for things like residuals and things like long-term employment, which, by the way, there was an interesting article in the New York Times this morning that talked about how this was really illustrative of what's happening in the labor market writ large. But let's focus on you right now and actors and writers. Anyway, I saw this article. You know, my daughter is a TV writer, and I thought, oh gosh, I wonder if Ellie has seen this. And this was the article, Cynthia, this morning. I'm sure you read it, how TV writing became a dead end job. I was like, oh, good Lord. But talk about answer if you could my original question about how streaming
Right.
has
So,
changed the
one of the
equation.
things that it's important to know about writers and actors, is that we don't, in our professions, go to work every day, 5 days a week, right? That we have jobs, we are trying to get jobs all the time, and we have jobs that exist for a certain period, and then they don't. And then we have to find another job, or we have to wait for that till that season comes back. So first of all, we need things to sustain us in between employment. And residuals were a really important part of that. And residuals are, like, for example, if you make a TV show, you get paid for that initial time that you make it and then when it airs, when it continues to air, you get residuals, which are payments each time it airs. And those payments go down and down and down the more time it airs. And just as a funny side note, there used to be, maybe there still is, a bar in Los Angeles called Residuals. And if you can bring in a residual check that's less than $1, they'll give you a free drink. And, you know, people are always, you know, we all get checks for like 19 cents, whatever. But at least initially when things started to air, there was substantial, you know, money that helped sustain you while you were in between jobs. And that would be true if you made a motion picture too, that you would get paid to make the movie. But then when it aired on ABC or whatever for the first time, and you know, you would get checks. There's like royalties for a musician or royalties for an author for writing books. So what's happened with streaming? It sort of initially happened when we broke out of, when there started to be all these cable channels, and it was like, it's the Wild West. These are fledgling companies. We're not going to demand residuals from them. We're going to let them, you know, find their footing. Well, it's been a number of decades since, you know, that was true, and now arguably they have superseded the standard traditional network channels. But we don't get any residuals from that work we do in television, and including if we do you know, now you do a movie in the movie theater, it doesn't then premiere on network TV, it streams. So that very important sustaining revenue that actors really depended on has just vanished. And you know, and obviously the streamers are making money hand over fist, and there is a lot of revenue, and the writers and the actors in this are saying the same thing, which is like, we are the people creating these shows and these movies. What we are asking is to me very small. We are asking that 2% of the revenue from these shows be given to us, the actors, and us, the writers, that are creating this content. And the studios and the people that we're fighting against they just like put their fingers in their ears and they pretend they're not hearing us, and they say, well, there's no way to do that. No, we're not even going to talk about that.
Is part of the issue, Cynthia, the fact that the number of people who watch any given show has been kept secret? Yes,
that is part of the, right.
And
we have on regular
you know,
television, we have the Nielsen ratings, right? And it's very clear to everybody how many people watch this particular show on this particular night. And so the AMPTP, who are the structure that we're fighting against, the studios, kind of their organization, they're saying, well, we have no idea how many people are watching. Well, and that's obviously not true, because it's very clear to them which shows are successful, you know, and when you go to stream something, you're considering watching something, and they say it's a 98% match for you, meaning we know exactly what you watch and how often you watch it and when you watch it, and that's why we're suggesting this other show.
Why do you think why have they kept that data so secret and not allowed people to have any kind of knowledge of it? I'm just curious.
We're seeing very clearly now that if that information was published, we would say, yeah, this is what we're talking about. This is what we need residuals for, in terms of both viewership and also, you know, some share of, you know, we can see what subscriptions, you know, go up when particular shows are being watched. People are joining to watch those specific shows. Yeah.
Let's talk about, you know, a lot of people, I think, are critical because they think of these superstar actors that are paid millions and millions of dollars, and they don't have a ton of sympathy. And yet that's obviously not representative of the industry as a whole. First of all, can you talk about SAG-AFTRA? Because I know it represents 160,000 people. And can you also talk, Cynthia, and by the way, if you all have questions, please put them in the question section. Can you talk about the fact that That's a very small percentage of actors who are bringing home
Right.
those mega
I mean,
salaries.
right. It's 160,000 people. And, you know, in order, you know, we get actors, we get our health insurance through the union, but we don't just automatically get health insurance through the union. We have to earn a certain amount of money to even get the lower tier of insurance. And the amount of money you need to earn as an actor in the union to qualify for getting health insurance is $26,000 a year. Now, only 13% of the people in our union make that mark. That means 87% of people who are in the union and are working and are, you know, it's not like they're working every once in a blue moon. These are people who are working, but it's a sign of how low the pay has become and how, you know, particularly in the last, you know, I guess 3 years, there's been a like 13% inflation. So, you know, the money that we are asking for also in terms of, you know, kind of base level salaries is really just to catch up with inflation. Like what the AMPTP is offering us now, if we took their offer, you know, even 3 years from now, when the contract that they're offering is still in effect, we would be in 2026 making less money than we made in 2020. And again, people are not able to pay their rent and put food on the table. And, you know, acting is, again, as you said, you know, there are these very celebrated, very wealthy, famous people that we know, but they're really like the tiny, tiny tip of the iceberg. And so many of journeyman actors earn their living working as background, as the people who in movies and TV who don't have lines. And one of the really scary things that we're looking at now, both for the writers and the actors, is the threat of AI. And so what has been happening to a lot of our background people is they come in to work on a show that they've been hired for, and they are asked, will they agree to do a body scan? And it seems like if you don't agree to do a body scan, you're not going to be hired to be a background actor in that particular episode. For a half a day, they scan your body, and then we keep hearing from these actors, I was in this one scene, and then I watched that show, and I'm in every scene, in every episode, all year. So with what they're trying to do, and this is a big thing that we're trying to regulate, is, you know, not allowing the producers to steal people's images and then use them in perpetuity without any compensation, you know, or even
notification. You know,
Correct.
you know, Cynthia, I saw. I don't have all the details, but a number of AI companies are getting together to self-regulate. Has SAG-AFTRA had any conversations with these AI companies at all, or you know, I'm just curious
I couldn't tell you. I mean, I think we're really we're very, you know, frightened by it in terms of. I mean, I don't know about you, but when I see a movie and I see, you know, a crowd of people, I can immediately tell whether those are real people or those are computer generated image, much less, you know, a scene in a restaurant where, you know, which we had in Sex and the City all the time, or in Just Like That, you know, people passing and like, you know, life, like that's a real skill, you know, to actually look like, to not detract from the main action that's happening, but actually look believable and like you're having lunch and like you're having a conversation, or like you're you know, it's that kind of level of life that, you know, lends a veracity to the TV show or the movie that you're watching. And again, you can't, we have 160,000 people in our union because it can't always be the same, you know, 30 people. It's like we have to have a, you know, a great variety of people depending on what the film is and what the scene is and what's called for. And these people have to have a way to sustain themselves.
I want to mention that in addition to professional actors, these are announcers, broadcast journalists, dancers, DJs, news writers, news editors, program hosts, puppeteers, recording artists, singers, stunt performers, and voiceover artists. So this is a huge segment of the industry that is part of SAG-AFTRA.
The threat of AI, I mean, is the mind reels when you start to think where this could go. I mean, talk about, people in your profession, talk about broadcast journalists, you think about Walter Cronkite being, woken up to announce the Kennedy assassination because the nation needed to hear that information from a person that we all felt not only comforted by, but was, a pillar of integrity. Well, with AI, you could take yourself, Katie, or even, somebody like Walter Cronkite who's no longer with us. I mean, you wouldn't do that because you would want to fool people, but you could use that person to announce news that wasn't true. I mean, it's, mind starts, the mind starts to reel. So I think it is very important, certainly from what we're talking about, which is making sure that people are compensated for their image and their labor. But also put some limits on what can happen so the public isn't fooled about who's saying what. The recent thing with Joe Biden, where you're saying, I can't even remember what it was, but something heinous.
Deep fakes and things like that. Yes. It's very scary, and disinformation is terrifying to a lot of people. I'm certainly one of them. I wanted to ask you about hours too, Cynthia. Let me just explain what I understand about writers, and then you can explain how it affects actors. So I guess writers were involved throughout the process previously, the writer's room, and then they would go on the set. They would continue writing, they would work with actors, they would work with producers, and they would be part of the creative process from soup to nuts. And now, I guess, after the writer's room is done and they delivered the scripts, not many of them are allowed to go on set. And this actually taught young writers how to be showrunners, how to be like in charge. And also, it was very helpful in making the quality of the show even better because it was collaborative and the people who wrote the scripts were a part of the production. That has changed. I understand it's because these streamers are trying to cut costs and be more quote unquote efficient. So how has the streaming schedule affected actors?
Well, let me talk about the writers
Cynthia,
for a minute, because I do think it's so important what you're saying. Television shows, let's say a sitcom, or would have like 26 episodes a season. I mean, that's a full, it's not 12 months of work, but it's a full kind of year of work. And to produce that much content in a short space of time, you needed a robust writer's room, and that writer's room would have people of every level in it. The most experienced, the mid-career people, and the newbies who were starting up and soaking it all in and learning, and you could formerly in a season like be trained enough and experienced enough that after a season you could go on to the next level of being a writer. Well, now shows sometimes are only for 8 episodes or 10 episodes, and it's not like they come on every year at the same time. It can be 2 years in between when a particular season of a show airs. So yeah, it's much harder for writers who are starting out to get both the practical experience and all the sort of the hours and the credentials to move up to the next level. And that's very...
And for senior writers, Cynthia, I imagine it's hard for them to work enough days that throughout the year, through a couple of years, that they can actually support themselves and their families.
And the thing is, people on the very, very top don't understand how important the writer's room is. It's not an indulgence. It's actually an incredibly fertile situation that creativity and brilliant shows come out of. And when you're endlessly cutting corners with this, you see it right away, both in terms of you're not building your bench, but also the people who are the more seasoned people are really strained to the breaking point. And this is very true of actors too, in terms of you used to get on a show and the show may not go on forever, but like, wow, a season of shows, 26 episodes, that then also is going to rerun, and I'm going to get residuals. Like, you can have some level of comfort and build a life around that, as opposed to, well, there's 8 episodes of this show and maybe that's it, and maybe in 2 years they'll make some more. I mean, it's very Wild Westy, and you were talking at the beginning about that this is happening in other industries, and I think the bottom line is jobs that used to be full-time jobs with benefits that one could earn a living, maybe buy a home, start a family, pay for college, all those sorts of things. We're just seeing this in every profession, that the people on top want to turn everybody into a gig worker, right?
Right, into contract work or freelance, because then they don't have to pay benefits, and then they save money.
And again, it's not because the industry is hurting. I mean, the streaming systems are making it. Just seems that, just frankly, the people at the top, the more and more and more money that is being earned by them, the less and less desire they have to actually share even a small part of that revenue with the people who are actually doing the work.
I want to get your reaction to some quotes from some of these, top dogs in the industry. But first, I wanted to ask you about streaming for actors, because the article I mentioned, How TV Writing Became a Dead-End Job, also said this: extreme levels of efficiency management, that's a euphemism if I've ever heard it, had led shows to break roles into smaller chunks and compress character storylines. Cynthia, somebody who's not in the business, I don't quite understand what they mean by that.
Understand it either. I mean, I guess what they mean is, rather than giving an actor a juicy role, that you would, want an actor of a certain stature and talent, that then that person could demand more of a salary. You would instead want to create lesser roles that you could get lesser paid people for.
Or shoot the action, or shoot that actor in a shorter amount of time. So you don't have to pay that actor as much, because smaller chunks and compressed character storylines, I guess that I'm not sure what that means. Let me ask you about Bob Iger's comments. He said recently on CNBC that writers and actors have unrealistic expectations when it comes to their demands. What was your reaction? Fran Drescher's was, he's making $78,000 a day. What is your reaction?
Quoted and it flashed his salary, which was like $46 million.
Yeah, it's actually, we looked it up actually this morning to see what his annual salary was, and $27 million. But I think it's more than that, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, and you see about these CEOs getting bonuses that are like, their bonus is 500 times their salary,
Right, I was going to say, that strikes me as
well,
low.
I think it just shows that things are not unrealistic if you ask for them and demand them. And again, what we're asking for 2% of the enormous revenue that is, we are the people doing the labor. We are the people doing the creating. We are the people that that the viewers tune in to see. We are the people who are writing the lines and the plots and creating the characters that people are fascinated by, which is why they subscribe and why they turn on their television.
So why do you think the industry is being so unwilling to kind of work with you all to give you what you want? I know that one of my followers asked why David Zaslav is so disliked, the head of Warner Brothers Discovery. And again, I think Bob Iger got a lot of criticism when he made that remark. So what do you think is motivating them? Is it the stock price? Is it understanding there's only a finite number of subscriptions that they can get or money they can get, and they can't pay for all this content? What is their motivation as far as you can tell, Cynthia?
It for a long time. And they don't want to give even 2% of their revenue. But the fact of the matter is they've just squeezed the writers and the actors, squeezed us until there's, you can't get blood from a stone at a certain point. And that's what they've done. And we can't keep up with inflation. Our work is being stolen by AI, and the residuals that were sustenance to so many of us are a thing of the past in most cases. And so it's why these two unions have, as you say, it's been a very long time since we went out on strike together. And we love our jobs. Actors love to show up and act. Writers love to go and write. It's one of the great things about going into these professions is that we love going to work every day. But we're seeing not only our livelihoods destroyed, but sort of the future of these professions as professions, except for a handful of super famous people.
All sorts of projects have been put on hold. Deadpool 3, Gladiator 2, Mission Impossible, Wicked, House of the Dragon. So do we know if shows and movies that were scheduled to come out in the next few weeks are going to push back their premieres? Obviously, actors aren't promoting movies. The Oppenheimer actors walked out, and, what's going to happen to these projects as far as you know?
I was at the picket this morning, and there were so many, great signs. And, one of them said, already more money has been lost just since the strike started than, we're asking for. People were saying on the picket today, and I have no idea if it's true, that, Barbie, which I think opened last night, has already earned, more money than we're asking for in just 12 hours or whatever it is. Yeah.
If you got in a room with Bob Iger and David Zaslav, what would you say to them?
I would say, you have enough money. You can't take it with you. What is this money for? We are creating all your content. Without us, there is nothing. And you can't just, we can't just strike and you can replace us, at the drop of a hat.
Having said that, Cynthia, I remember reading when the writer's strike started that they claimed they had enough in the pipeline. How long do you think that pipeline will last?
The thing that I have been hearing is that if it goes, into September, they're really going to be in trouble in terms of, there's nothing new to watch on TV, to stream, nothing new in the movie theaters. A lot of people are going to, you subscribe to a channel or a streaming service because you're excited to see the new stuff they have on. If there's nothing new coming out that you're waiting for, or the second season or third season of a show you're devoted to, you're just going to drop that subscription. And again, we're the people who are really, really hurting financially. so much so that we are willing to go out on strike. 2%, you're not going to feel it, and neither are and neither are your stockholders, you know. But they are going to feel it if month after month after month we're not, you know, we're not coming back to work.
Two quick questions. Someone asked if you know of anyone, or if we know of anyone who is crossing the picket line.
I don't. I don't know personally, but I'm not. It's not like I'm particularly. That's where my focus is. So I honestly know.
Yeah, understood. Someone said, is there some level of culpability? This is Christopher Wensley. Is there some level of culpability from megastar actor salaries taking away from the ability to offer better wages to other actors?
I mean, I don't. I mean, that's a whole other conversation about people who earn $50 million for a movie. But no, I mean, again, it's not like the money isn't there, and it's not like the profits aren't growing and growing and growing, and it's not like the baseline SAG salaries are not shrinking and shrinking and shrinking due to inflation and due to, you know, not revisiting. Like the for example, just as a small example, like, well, not so small, but just as an example, the producers' contributions to our healthcare and our pensions and health insurance, those haven't, the caps on those haven't been revisited in 40 years.
Cynthia, someone asked, are there assistance programs for actors who are unemployed and also for writers?
I'm afraid I don't know the answer. I'm sorry.
I think there are. I asked my daughter this, and I think there are funds that have been set up to help
I'm very
writers
aware of
and
in
actors
the theater,
who,
you know, the actor fund kind of stuff, but
yeah,
on the Screen Actors Guild level, I don't know.
a lot of people are asking how they can help support SAG workers and also people in the WGA. I added that because I think
totally
writers
do.
are so important too.
I mean, the more you can, you know, support us, you know, talk about us on your social media, talk to your friends about it. And I have to say, as I was at the picket today, and, you know, so many people who walked by or drove by, you know, gave us a honk and gave us a cheer and said, we're with you. And that stuff really matters.
Someone said, how long will the actors strike last, and what deal can be agreed to end this mess? I guess that's the big question, right?
Somebody was just telling me that the SAG-AFTRA Foundation Fund is a resource.
Oh. Okay, and people can I'll write this. I'll write the name of the funds under this interview, Cynthia, so people can contribute if they want. Sorry, someone's named Stevie News says, how long will the actor strike last, and what deal can be agreed to end this
You know,
mess?
I don't know how long, but it's like so many things that you know, sometimes I don't know, when we're at war, you know, we think we can invade a country. You know, you think about the American Revolution, and it seemed like we were so outnumbered, but the people here were the people that it really mattered to, that it was life and death for them. For the British, they could just go home, right? That's how I feel about, you know, the AMPTP. You know, they're really determined to save that 2%. But at the end of the day, if we can't pay our rent and feed our kids, we're not gonna stop, you know?
It's interesting, Cynthia. Someone said, I feel like canceling our subscriptions to the streaming services would be the only thing that would give the studios incentive to negotiate. Why is no one calling for a boycott of the studios?
It's a very interesting idea. It's a very interesting idea. Yeah.
Interesting. Anyway, well, listen, I so appreciate. Is there anything else, Adriana, that you feel like I should ask Cynthia that I haven't? I think though maybe just in closing, sorry, someone said, what are the 3 top issues that SAG-AFTRA has not, you know, that is keeping you all from going back to work?
You know, one is increase of of minimum pay, which is we're so far behind because of inflation and other things, of how long it's been since it's been revisited. And number two is participation in streaming, that we really need to, actors and writers both need to participate in the vast revenue that is coming from these streaming services, and that is just uncaptured by us in a way that doesn't work for us to pay our bills, but also doesn't work traditionally. You know, we have since the very first television show was on in the 40s, you know, there were residuals right there from the get-go. It's baked in. And the third thing is AI. You know, the real threat of AI for writers and for performers, and the need to have that regulated and contained and controlled, and to have us have some say.
And
Yes.
put some guardrails on that. Yes. Well, that's something I think that is concerning to a lot of people, not just people in the entertainment industry, in terms of the role that's going to play in the future for all kinds of jobs. Cynthia, I know you're taking off, you're taking a trip, so I so appreciate you spending a few, well, more than a few moments, almost 40 minutes with us explaining this. Thank you so much. It's great to see you.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I loved
And
hearing from you, and that was just a wonderful idea you had. So thank you.